Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's lesson meeting, and also I would like to welcome new members on the panel. You're welcome. Any apologies? Yeah.
Councillor Poulter, I think some might be delayed because of the bad traffic out there.
Thank you. Robert, yeah, thanks. Late items to be introduced by Chair, none. Any declaration of interest? No, thank you. Minutes of the meeting held on 23rd March 2017. Somebody second? Yeah, thank you. Item number 5, taxi license fees and charges 2017-18. Mike? Yeah, Michael.
Oh, crikey, mine's loud as well. Sorry. Crikey, they must have turned the volume switch up, mustn't they? I'll stand back. Yeah. Thank you, Chair, yes. This report provides information on the proposed licence fees and charges for driver, vehicle and operator licences and other charges for part of the 2017-18 period. The Hackney Carriage and private hire licensing fees and charges are reviewed regularly. These licensing functions are self-financing and non-profit making and must be set at a level to recover the total costs incurred in providing the service. Separate accounts must be kept for each type of licence issued, namely those for Hackney Carriage drivers, Hackney Carriage vehicles, private hire drivers, private hire operators and private hire vehicles. Budgets are set using historical knowledge and experience. A calculation of time spent on each activity is based on assessment. Year-end adjustments are made on actual spends. Any surplus or deficit generated in any financial year for any one type of licence must be used to offset that particular type of licence in the following financial year. This means that separate licence fees and charges will need to be calculated for each particular type of licence independently of each other and will, more likely than not, fluctuate each year. The taxi licensing budget working paper that sets out the methodology undertaken in calculating the proposed fees is attached to Appendix 2. The proposed licence fees and charges for driver, vehicle and operator licences and other charges for 2017-18 are set out in Appendix 3. In accordance with the legislative requirements set out, before certain new fees and charges are introduced, the Council is required to publish them in a local newspaper. Any representations must be lodged within 28 days from the date of publication. The Act provides that where a representation is made and not withdrawn, the Council must consider it. In the event of this occurring, a provisional meeting of the Licensing Committee has been arranged on the 21st of September 2017 to consider any matters that may arise. The recommendations, Chair, then, are to approve, subject to the consideration of any representations, the proposed licence fees and charges for driver, vehicle and operator licences and other charges for 2017-18 as set out at Appendix 3. To request the Service Director of Communities, Environment and Regulatory Services to advertise the proposed variation of fees, to delegate to the Strategic Director Communities in Place following consultation with the Chair to consider any representations received within the required period and to take appropriate action if required to address such representations, and to approve the new licence fees to become effective from the 1st of October 2017, subject to there not being any representations received during the required period or where any such representations have been withdrawn. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Councillor Barker.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Mike, for doing this. I know it's an absolute trawl every year that we have to go through this. And I know it's become more difficult because of the now 3-year licence. And we have to sort of project forward. I suppose the questions I've got, one is in relation to the fact that I think some of these 3-year licences, we're going to do quite a few of them this year, aren't we? Or potentially going to do quite a few of those 3-year licences. And in the interim period, of course, we are still in the realms of recruiting more officers to fulfil the new criteria or the new protocols that we've laid. Has that been taken into account, or obviously those that buy a 3-year licence this year have paid a set fee for that 3 years, but our expenses will go up accordingly, so it will surely have a detrimental effect on those that are only on a 1-year licence, because the 1-year licence next year will take into account any extra charges, and that will go up proportionally more, presumably, because of it. You know what I mean? I mean, we've not projected forward in relation to that. I notice, I mean, there's the related charges, which are all separated. Now, that's fine, because I think as we go along, we're introducing more related charges in relation to the tests and that sort of thing that we've put into place. But it's that set fee, which, as I say now, has to project forward for 3 years, and yet we're already building into the plan an increase in staffing.
Yes, it is a complicated process. The additional posts that were identified recently have been built in and incorporated into the costings now. And just to clarify the point, the first 3-year licences will become renewable, not in this period. They will be from October 2018. But obviously we still have to calculate fees and charges for all of the various licences that we need to issue.
Thank you, Mike. Any more questions? No? All are agreed with the recommendations? One, two, three, four. Are we all agree with the recommendations? Yeah. Thank you. Item number 6, general license, administration and compliance activities, Q4, 2016-17. Sandra, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. This report relates to the administration and compliance activities for Q4 2016-17, general licensing. The information in Appendix 2 lists the numbers of licences, permits, etc., and requests for service that the team have received. Appendix 3 provides details of the other licensing activities undertaken, and Appendix 3, provides the details of other licensing activities. The recommendation is to note the report, and the reason being that it informs members of the activities undertaken by the team. Thank you.
Any questions? Councillor Hazel-Graves.
Just are there any trends we ought to be aware of from those 2 years' figures?
No, I mean it fluctuates. It just depends on what we're being asked for as to what we have to do. I mean, some have gone up, some have gone down. The only thing that's really impacting is the Immigration Act, because we're having to do more checks and things. So that might, in time, stop some licences being issued. I don't know, but we'll have to wait and see on that. That's quite new. Bless you.
Thank you, Sandra. All in favour? Yeah, thank you. Taxi licensing administration and compliance activities, Q4 2016-17. Sandra again, please.
Thank you, Chair. This report relates to the administration and compliance activities for Q4 2016-2017 in relation to taxi licensing. The information in Appendix 2 details the request for service and the number of licence processed. The information in Appendix 3 details the compliance work using a risk-based approach. It is therefore important that it is acknowledged that the information does not indicate the condition of the whole fleet. Appendix A details information in relation to the knowledge tests. A breakdown of licensed vehicles by year of registration is at Appendix 5. Appendix 6 details reports and outcomes of the Taxi and Licensing Subcommittee. The recommendation is to note the report so as to inform members of the activities undertaken by the licensing team. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Any question? Councillor Barker.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I think it needs to be said that whilst we are looking at these quarterly statistics, it would be very interesting to actually note that as of April this year, the number of drivers that we've got, both Hackney and also private hire, and it will be very interesting to see after this next 12-month period, with these increasing fees and the increase in criteria by which a driver has to go through, as to whether or not that actually goes up or down. Because, you know, I mean, you're aware of my fear. My fear, of course, is that with putting all the criteria on that we've got now, we will drive drivers away. We will force drivers to go away to look elsewhere where it's cheaper. It'd be very interesting to actually compare our fees as well at some stage, as well, if that's possible. But I mean, basically, I'm looking at the current number of drivers and the current number of licences that we actually issue. My recollection is it's actually gone down a little bit anyway from what it was, certainly in relation to private hire. But it'd be very interesting to actually note the figures next year in relation to our new regime, so to speak. Just a point I was making.
Thank you, Councillor Barker. Any more questions?
It is noticeable as you drive around Derby just how many cars now aren't registered in the city. I mean, what's the percentage? It's almost unusual to see a car with a Derby plate on it.
I can't tell you the percentage because they don't have to tell us, the operators don't have to tell us who they have working for them if they're third-party vehicles. So I can't answer that question, I'm afraid. Yeah, or request other local authorities to tell us if they're aware, but again, whether they'd be aware, I'm not sure. But yeah, the operators don't have to tell us if they've got out-of-town taxis. Private hire, sorry. Yeah, we've got very few Arrowash, but we have got a few. South Derbyshire, Rushcliffe, East Staffs, Gedlin, Rossendale, sorry, yeah.
Councillor Janji-Khan.
Sandra, I think, do I recall that not long ago, we did said that we are going to be monitoring the controllers and where the drivers come from and all that, and we will somehow know. Am I right saying that? When we recall, did we mention something like that in previous meetings?
Not that I can recall, Chair, no. Sorry, Luke. Unless you're thinking, Councillor Khan, in terms of the enforcement exercises that we do with other officers from the other authorities, you know, we do those. If that's what you were thinking of, I'm not quite sure.
I did raise that because I think if we are going to be, if they're working for the base, yeah, so that somehow isn't the council was going to monitor how many outside drivers each base has, so that we know actually the figures that how many are with one base, how many are with the other, you know.
I mean, a long time ago, when this first phenomenon started to occur, we did go through the process of attaching some additional conditions to private hire operators. I don't believe, though, that was a requirement to ask them to notify us of how many third-party vehicles they were using. I mean, I certainly I don't believe that we can require that by law. I mean, whether or not there's anything to stop us writing to all of the private hire operators and asking them to voluntarily provide that information. But of course, a voluntary request doesn't necessarily mean that they then will tell us.
Councillor Siraj Khan.
Thank you, Chair. I think, yes, in an ideal world, we'd probably like to know how many drivers each base employs, but it's quite impractical because they can literally lose a driver, every hour because they disagree with the way the controller is giving information out and jobs out. So it'd be very, very difficult to try and get a base to say, well, how many cars do you have today? Because they won't know if that number will be the same tomorrow. And they certainly won't know, where the cars are coming from. Yes, they'll know if they're from out of town, but are they going to sort of register them separately? I don't think they'll do that. And I think it's certainly quite impractical to try and get a figure from them because I know for a fact that the number of drivers working for each base fluctuates weekly.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. I'm sure we can write to them, request them, and I'm sure they must have a record on the record book, look how many drivers they were from outside. And it's no harm to writing to them, requesting, see what they say.
No, Chair, I'm not saying we shouldn't do that. What I'm saying is it'll be difficult to ask them to give us a record of, sort of week by week. They certainly should be registering all the drivers that are coming to their base, whether it's for one night or two. They should have a record of who's worked for them, so that if there's any complaints by a passenger or any kind of accident or whatever, we know that it was, that they had given that driver the job. So yes, they should be registering them, but whether they can give us a weekly figure or not as to how many are with them and, from which authority they are, I don't know if we can legally force that.
Councillor Barker.
Yes, thanks, Chair. This is a question I think that comes up every time in these committee meetings in relation to third-party drivers. And I know that as a council, having been on this committee for a long time, we've tried every which way we can to, in actual fact, gain some control over the situation. And I think the situation is getting worse rather than better, as Councillor Jackson says. I am aware that I passed a paper the other day to Mr. Idaho in relation to another government quango getting involved in relation to equal human rights and all this business, where they're actually suggesting that it actually could get worse with taxi drivers because basically we are preventing them from earning a living wherever they may be. And so they're saying that the licensing regime that we've got at present time might have to be eased rather than actually made more difficult by virtue of the fact that these people deserve to earn a living. They seem to omit the fact that we're here to protect the public. That's the only problem. But it's yet another government quango that's getting involved. We are, with officers, with our legal team and through Councillor Bagishankar, still trying to schedule a meeting to try and bring about some control over operators. And I know Olu will turn around and say, well, we've tried that before and a judge decided that that was a step too far, but that was about 3 years ago now, if something like that. And so therefore it might be worth trying again. In other words, operators should, in actual fact, bear some responsibility for the cars they're actually putting out onto the road when they are out-of-town vehicles. But that doesn't solve the driver business. But the driver side of it is there should be a fairly even spread of legal requirements for that driver to meet that should meet our requirements, with the exception of all the new stuff that we've put onto it. But it's the vehicles that I have more concern with now in relation to, if you look at the figures that Mike's produced before, where we have done these out-of-town tests on vehicles, 8 out of 10 of them are defective, for example. Now, it's quite easy, and I'm not suggesting it as a norm. Well, I suppose I am really. You know, if you've got an out-of-town taxi driver and you want a new tyre, you may as well come into Derby and earn your money to buy that tyre, because nobody's going to stop you. It's as simple as that. And that's an analogy I've come up with. And that's the problem. These vehicles are coming into town and are already defective. My suggestion is, as I say, and we've yet to actually get a meeting to discuss it, is that we should hold the operator responsible for that vehicle going out in a roadworthy condition. And if it don't, it's the operator that should actually be hauled before us on it, never mind the driver back in their own base. That's the thing for the future, but I just wanted the rest of the committee to know that, because, as I say, it is ongoing, but we seem to be sort of slipping in relation to that particular meeting. But on top of that now, there's this extra legislation, or this extra directive coming out from the centre, saying that we've got to ease up on these people rather than actually make it harder for them. Am I right, Olu?
I think you've summed it up very well. It's the crossover between commercial law and regulatory law. That's fundamentally it. And from a regulatory law perspective, what the legislation says is that any vehicle that's not registered or licensed by us is the responsibility of its home authority, and so we cannot enforce against it. Hence, when the officers go out with the police and do these joint operations, they go together with the enforcement officers from those other authorities, and it's those enforcement officers who can stop those vehicles, not our officers. And therein lies the problem, because when you then add in the effects of case law, what case law effectively is saying is that as regards the relationship between those out of towns and their local firms that they twin with, if I can use that expression, that's a commercial arrangement. And so we, as the regulatory authority, should not be intervening in that, because our responsibility is our license holders, those other out of towners, the responsibility of their home authority, and anything we put in place to try and regulate them is therefore unlawful and therefore anti-competitive, as you picked up in that article which you sent to me. So it's a very complicated position, and you're absolutely right. I'll know my colours to the mast. It's not in the public interest, because it creates a loophole whereby public safety is very significantly jeopardized. But we are a public authority. We're obliged to comply with the law, and the law is what it is currently. It's unsatisfactory.
Thank you, Olu. Do we agree with the proposal of Mr. Jahangir Khan's? We should write to them, or? Yeah? You okay with that, Mark?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you very much. All in favor of the recommendation? Thank you, carried.
I've got another question on it actually, on paper 7. Appendix 6. We've got the welcome information in relation to statistics on pages 9 and 10 of Appendix 6. I'm just interested in the...
Councillor Bartlett.
Yeah?
A recommendation we already approved, so we can't open that again. Sorry.
Well, it moved, but nobody put their hand up, did they?
No, you did approve. Next item is Immigration Act and the Liquor License Secretary. Sandra will take us through.
Thank you, Chair. This report relates... Sorry, I've got the wrong report. Apologies. I'm going backwards. This report relates to the Immigration Act 2016, which has amended the licensing regime to prevent illegal working in licensed premises in relation to liquor licensing. The Act from the 6th of April 17 prevents local authorities from issuing licences to people who are disqualified due to their immigration status. Local authorities can discharge their duties by requiring the applicant to provide documentation that confirms their entitlement to work and live in the country and therefore hold a licence. The Act also adds the Home Office Secretary as a responsible authority. Immigration officers also have the powers of entry, and systems have been introduced by the licensing team to ensure compliance with the requirements. The recommendation is to note the report and to provide reassurances that the licensing team have discharged their duties. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Any question? No. All in favour of the report note? Thank you. Update on change of taxi licensing administration. Michael.
Thank you, Chair. Yes. Members will be aware of the changes to the taxi licensing administration system that have recently been introduced from the 1st of July 2017. Work has continued to be undertaken on implementing the measures agreed by Council and the Licensing Committee. All the information for new and existing applicants, including downloadable content, is accessible on the Council's website. All existing drivers have been written to, updating them on the changes and providing a link to the Council's website. The Derby-based points system is now being used to assess driver licence applications. Points will be determined for new applications, at renewal of existing licences, or if any changes in circumstances are notified. As members requested, the points table incorporates certain scenarios whereby determination will be made by Taxi Licensing Subcommittee. Work has been undertaken with the Derby and Derbyshire LMC to ensure that all our GP practices are aware of and understand the requirements for drivers to undertake a Group 2 medical examination. Local providers of the relevant basic skills tests have been identified and information is available on the Council's website, along with information on the providers of the practical driver tests that are applicable to new licensed driver applications. The dual badge option for licensed drivers is available from the 1st of July, subject to the applicant meeting the minimum application threshold. The safeguarding training is being delivered by officers from our safeguarding teams. They've developed the training package that includes information on a range of both adult and children safeguarding issues. The short course is being offered initially on a monthly basis. A number of bookings have already been taken, with 3 courses being fully booked. And the first course takes place tomorrow. There's been a delay in recruiting to some of the additional posts identified and agreed previously. An additional member of staff has been recruited and further work is being done to fill the remaining posts. A specific issue has been identified in relation to the basic skills tests and the prescribed mandatory safeguarding training for existing licensed drivers who currently hold an annual licence. As it currently stands, those drivers who hold an annual licence will need to ensure that they obtain and produce evidence that they have satisfactorily completed all the basic skills test requirements and mandatory safeguarding training on or before the renewal of their next licence. In many cases, this will be impossible to achieve because of the time it takes to complete the training, particularly in relation to the basic skills tests. So, in order to allow existing annually relicensed drivers a reasonable and proportionate amount of time to obtain the required standard, the proposal is to defer the introduction of the need to obtain and produce these criteria to before or no later than on application of their next renewal of the driver's licence. So what we're saying is that that's going to be from July 2018. Essentially what we're asking is that we defer for a year those requirements, so that essentially they don't have to meet those requirements until the 1st of July 2018 onwards. So if you remember what I said earlier on, that the first batch of our 3-year licensed drivers, their licenses will not be up for renewal until October 2018 onwards. Essentially what we're asking is to move those yearly licensed drivers back a year. So the recommendations, Chair, then, are to note the information provided on the implementation of the changes made to the taxi licensing administration system, approve the proposal set out in the report to defer the introduction of the need for existing annually licensed drivers to obtain and produce a Level 1 functional skills assessment certificate in Maths, English and ICT to before or no later than on application for the next renewal of their driver's licence from the 1st of July 2018, and approve the proposal set out in the report to defer the introduction of the need for existing annually licensed drivers to undertake the prescribed mandatory safeguarding training to before or no later than on application for the next renewal of their driver's licence from the 1st of July 2018. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Councillor Janggi Khan.
Thank you, Chair. Mike, the basic skills test, I was never in favour of in the working group. I was in favour of the licensing group meeting, and I still don't agree with this, but these are local providers. So the local providers, who are they and how much cost is it going to be for the drivers? That's one question, and I've got one or two for, yeah? So the second one is safeguarding. Is that safeguarding training being charged, or is it free for drivers?
Okay.
Yeah. And the third one, the recruitment. Which staff is still to be recruited? Which sort of...
Okay. I'll take them in reverse order then, because the last two were easier to answer than the first one. So we've recruited to the the administration officer post. So there is somebody now in the licensing team helping to support the licensing officers to undertake some of that sort of basic administration and sort of business administration work. The two posts that we've not recruited to yet are the licensing officer. We've actually gone out with an advert for that, but have not had any suitable candidates. And we've also not currently recruited to the licensing policy officer post. Question 2, the mandatory safeguarding training. It's being run internally, as I said. We've agreed a nominal fee with the officers that are delivering that, basically to recover their costs. It's £30. Yeah, £30 per applicant. Yeah, and then. The first question relates to, I think, the functional skills assessment, the local providers. Derby College, Derbyshire County Council, and the, help me out, adult learning centres. Sorry.
Derby Adult Learning Service.
Derby Adult Learning Services.
So that's also a cost.
Right, yes, sorry, yes, I've got information, I've had some further information from Derby College. Maths and English is free of charge. ICT is free to people on benefits, but of course there's probably not going to be a lot of our existing taxi drivers who are on benefit. So if you're not on benefit, the ICT level 1 functional skills assessment is £150. Were they all your questions? Yeah.
Councillor Barton.
Yes, one or two questions as well, Chair. First and foremost, under recommendation 2.1, to note the information provided, presumably that information will be recorded in the stats as we've referred to in the previous paper. So all the implementation of the changes, the number of ones that go through the system, the number of ones that are accepted. And I know she's not here, but I do recollect that Councillor Froggatt brought up an interesting factor last time, because in the paper, as I read it, there was, in exceptional circumstances, a senior officer could, in actual fact, delay or not revoke the licence. And she did ask that when those circumstances arose, that it be brought before this committee for us to know why that was done.
Yeah, what we will do moving forward, because obviously 1st of July will be quarter 2. So you've received quarter 4 activities, so that would have been January, February and March. Quarter 1 is April, May, June. That will still be under the old system. So once you start to get the statistics reports for quarter 2, July, August, September, that will reflect all of these decisions that are being made under the Derby Point scheme, yeah.
The final question, Chair, and it's be a little bit more controversial, is in relation to 2.3, where if we agree to defer this mandatory training for renewals, I take it that if they haven't completed it by by July the 1st, 2018, this committee would endorse the fact that they are not issued their licence.
Yeah, just to be clear, it's licence renewals from the 1st of July 2018. So yes, the scenario would be, say we've just issued an annual licence to somebody on the 2nd of July 2017. You're right, when their licence came up for renewal on the 2nd of July 2018, they would have been expected to have achieved the basic skills and the mandatory safeguarding course. We've got a scenario where somebody's annual licence was renewed on the 28th of June 2017. Their licence would be up for, annual licence would be up for renewal on the 28th of June 2018. We wouldn't necessarily require them to have done those tests. So the cut-off point is from the 1st of July 2018, not by the 1st of July 2018, yeah?
But if I may come back, Chair, but in sending this letter out informing drivers of this, they are being made totally aware that should they fail to comply with the new conditions, they will not receive their licence.
Yes, that will be the case. Just like any of our 3-year licence holders who have not achieved the part of the requirements when they renew, yeah.
Chair, for the avoidance of doubt, the new system works on the premise that the need to provide those certificates is part of the pack that is the minimum application threshold. And in effect, if they don't have the certificate, it's an incomplete application, and so it cannot be processed.
Councillor Siraj.
Thank you, Chair. I think Mike's asked the first question I was going to ask, which was the clarity on the July 2018. The second thing is, I mean, this sort of level 1 functional skills assessment, is this a replacement for the NBQ BTEC, or is it as well as?
as well as, yeah. It's the MVQ requirement that's part of the minimum application threshold.
Right, okay, so, I mean, I don't know what we're asking these drivers to do. I mean, are we going to ask them for a university degree next? They're doing NVQ, they do BTEC. Some of these have been driving for 30 odd years and we're asking them to take basic functional tests next year. I mean, I don't know, you know, what we hope to achieve by this.
Yeah, we've done some, as I say, to Jangir. We've done some work with Derby College. What Derby College are telling us is that when you inquire to enrol on one of these functional skills assessments, one of these functional skills courses, the initial part of that process is to undertake an assessment. So you will go along to the college and meet with an assessor who will talk to you about what skills and qualifications you obtain. Now, certainly for maths and English, what Derby College are saying is that it may well be that you have got, a number of qualifications already under your belt. And if they are relevant and pertinent, they may well, I'm just sort of looking at the wording, which is what they've said is, they will be able to offer, let me just bear with me a second, there may be a fast-track flexible option depending on the result of each student's assessment. So the maths and English courses are free. There's no indication that, existing drivers will need to pay for that, but they will be able to go to the college, they will be assessed, and it may well be that they be given, some kind of fast track in order to obtain the qualification. I don't know whether or not that sort of helps answer some of your concerns.
Well, quite frankly, no, it doesn't help. I mean, what I can't understand is if we wanted some additional training from them, why can't we incorporate a course for them then and say, in NVQ they were learning customer care or whatever, and now we're saying they need computer skills, they need maths, they need English. Why isn't the NVQ or BTEC sufficient, for this?
Well, with respect, I don't think we're here to debate whether or not a basic skills test needs to be a requirement. Those decisions have already been taken. All I'm really sort of reporting on is what we've done to facilitate those drivers being able to obtain those qualifications.
No, I'm not debating it. I'm merely asking why we couldn't have done a course instead of asking them to do NVQ, BTEC, and then, basic functional level. I just, wanted to know why we couldn't do that.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Councillor Jangir Khan.
Well, those additional posts were only ever required from the 1st of July, so there was no requirement for us to appoint those posts before the 1st of July. We had to get the system in place. I'm just trying to sort of cast my mind back to the conversations and comments we talked about when we were talking about those posts. That licensing policy officer post, the purpose of that moving forward was to help support Sandra and Anne, the two senior officers in the licensing team, for reviewing and tweaking some of the policies that we've introduced, but probably more so to help support, develop and produce any new policies that we needed. Obviously to write some of the you know, sort of policy reports and papers that we needed when we're taking, bringing items to committee in the future, to writing some of the papers that we may need to produce, that we get appeals following the points table decisions that we were making. So I don't think it's as simple as just to say, we've produced all the policies we needed, why do we need the licensing policy officer?
Councillor Hazelgrave.
I'm pleased we've done something about this situation for the drivers who have to annually renew because they're over 70 and have to get their driving licence every year, so therefore apply again for a licence as a taxi driver. And I think it's only right that we give them that grace period because it would be ridiculous if, you know, they had to do these 3 courses in such a short time if they were, say, renewing in October this year. I think the whole issue of the equivalence is something that's going to need to be clarified to drivers, because it might be that many of them are driving around today with a grade G in English from school and a grade G in maths, and they are actually equivalents of a level 1 basic skills, or whatever you want to call it, and they won't need to go through a test for that. The IT might be another issue. I think fewer people did that as a core subject for their GCSEs. Now, I appreciate, my question really relates to the whole kind of regime for taxi drivers. I appreciate that the point system's been introduced now, the penalty point system. Can you clarify how it will be applied to existing drivers?
Yeah, so it's not going to be applied retrospectively, so it doesn't come into force straight away, as I think I sort of covered in my presentation. That will be applied at renewal of their next licence. So as we've said a couple of times now, the first batch of 3-year licences, driver licences, will not start to be renewable until October 2018. So for the majority of the existing drivers, we won't apply the points table until their next renewal. Unless, of course, there is a change in circumstances. So if they notify us as part and parcel of the requirements under the driver conditions that they have, you know, picked up a conviction, then we will then look at them, we will then apply the points table from that point onwards. So the vast majority of drivers will not begin to have that applied until the beginning of October 2018.
I'd just like to ask a further question now. I know we're due to have an evaluation at the end of this year, but a real qualitative evaluation would need to look at the impact of the point system over a lot of drivers. So it may be that we have to have an evaluation after the first year that it's been more or less fully implemented with quite a few drivers. And I don't know if we've thought that ahead.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've already got incorporated a review of these changes, I think, within 12 months. Yeah, so No. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson.
The extra staff that have been recruited to help out with the new arrangements, presumably they've got to be qualified, well, trained licensing staff. We can't have redeployment from within the council while the situation is as it is.
Exactly right, and that's where it's proved to be a little bit difficult into recruiting to the posts that we've struggled with. As you quite rightly say, you know, we are looking for people who can, you know, hit the ground running in the first instance. In order for them to be able to do that, it would be useful if they have had, you know, previous license experience within a local authority. You know, ideally in a taxi licensing background. Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Winter.
If we do approve these recommendations, will the website be updated as soon as possible?
Yes. Yeah, we're in a bit more control on the content of the website now, so we can almost make those changes, not immediately, because there's a bit of a lapse period before we're uploading, but yes, yeah. I mean, for example, you know, we made sure that all of the changes were available on the website. Well, it was on the night of the 30th of June, actually, they went live, but they were ready to go, so, yeah.
Councillor Holmes?
Thank you, Chair. Something's just occurred to me. The proposed licence fees and charges for 17 to 18, when does the cost of the basic skills test, ICT test, appear on it? Because it's not on it at the moment. Is it?
Well, it's because it's external, because they're provided by external providers, you know, local colleges and organisations. The payment is made directly to them. Maths and English are free anyway. It's only the ICT test that, again, I understand from Derby College that it's £150. So we're not handling any of that cash. All we're doing is signposting the you know, new applicants and existing drivers in the direction of course providers locally. They are, of course, free to go anywhere to get the level 1 qualifications.
Thank you, Mike. Any more questions? Thank you. All in favour of recommendations? Thank you, carried. Thank you very much. We'll close the meeting. Thank you for your attendance. And also thank you for killing me.